Thank you very much, moderator Simon. Ambassador Mukantabana, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, and friends from Rwanda who are here in particular. I am deeply honored to have been invited to speak at this event at the UN, and in this year that so sadly marks the 20th in Rwanda. We all recall that our honored guest today, Senator Romeo Dallaire, also another friend of mine, as force commander of the UN mission in Rwanda, sounded the alarm about the frightening developments in the country. As we all know, he did not receive the response he needed, and above all, the response which the people of Rwanda needed, as we have just heard so movingly from Ambassador Mukantabana. Others, too, tried to alert and mobilize the international community. In 1993, a UN Special Rapporteur warned that all the precursors of genocide were visible in Rwanda. But the UN system and the world were not able to stop the events unfolding on the ground. The consequences of failing to heed the warning signs were monumentally horrifying. We must never forget the collective failure to prevent the Rwandan genocide. Repeating the phrase, "never again," is in itself a sign of continued failure. Over the years, there have been several proposals to improve action by the UN in the face of grave crimes and violations of human rights. Some of these recommendations emerged from two landmark exercises in self-scrutiny. One, the 1999 independent inquiry on UN action in Rwanda, and two, the UN Secretariat's 1999 review of the fall of Srebrenica. One of the first areas in which we saw progress was on criminal accountability for atrocity crimes. The Security Council established the International Criminal Tribunals for the former Yugoslavia and for Rwanda to prosecute alleged perpetrators. We also now have a permanent body, the International Criminal Court, ICC, as the centerpiece of the global system designed to deal with these horrendous crimes. Trials by domestic justice systems have also confirmed the primary duty of states to investigate and prosecute human rights abuses. In September 2005, member states endorsed the concept of responsibility to protect, and I was very proud to be the President of the General Assembly at that time. In recent years, we have also taken steps to strengthen genocide prevention, conflict resolution, the protection of civilians, the rule of law, and human rights mechanisms. As a result, the United Nations and the international system are now better prepared to anticipate, prevent, and I would strongly hope, respond to crisis. Let me here acknowledge the role played by civil society. In these efforts, civil society played a very important role, and I particularly want to commend here the Global Center for R2P for its work and under the leadership of Dr. Simons. But I also want to acknowledge the courage and commitment of so many individuals, including UN staff in the field, who are providing early warning and supporting local and national efforts to protect human rights and stop conflicts from escalating. We need look no further than South Sudan today for an example of dedication and innovation in protecting people. In spite of a tragically great number of people being killed in the conflict, thousands of civilians are alive today because they have sought shelter inside UN facilities and have been provided with protection and assistance. Conditions there are trying and difficult, and the situation remains volatile. But for the moment, people are largely safe, and the UN is doing its utmost to see to their needs while promoting a peaceful resolution of the conflict. However, let us admit that the lessons we have learned over the years have not always been followed by action. Since the tragedy in Rwanda, hundreds of thousands of people have died in mass atrocities and tens of millions have been displaced. Over the last few weeks alone, men, women, and children have been slaughtered, not only in South Sudan, but also in the Central African Republic and in the nightmare of Syria. The consequences for victims and their families over the past 2 decades have been staggering. The wider impact has been disastrous for peace and security, as well as for the economic and social developments of entire regions. This is all the more so because of the deeply worrying and growing divisions along religious or ethnic lines that we are witnessing in many nations. The demonization, I use that word intentionally, of people of different faiths or ethnic belonging is one of the most toxic deeds of which human beings are capable. It undermines the fundamental principle that must lie at the heart of human interaction and, in fact, of the United Nations. That is the incontrovertible truth of every human being's equal value. When people are killed or violated in the name of religion, race, or ethnicity, everybody's humanity is diminished. We are all brutalized, victims and perpetrators, as well as bystanders. From this somber perspective, strengthening action to prevent human rights violations and abuses must be one of the most important issues that member states and secretariat alike must deal with in today's troubled world. It was with grave violations of human rights in mind that in April 2012, Secretary Ban Ki-moon established an internal review panel to examine UN action in Sri Lanka during the final stages of that conflict, and to recommend ways to strengthen our response in similar situations. The panel's report concluded that there had been a systemic failure of UN action. It also stated that some of the failings were close to those that had occurred 15 years earlier in Rwanda. The panel proposals for broad changes in the way the UN works on the ground generated a process of profound internal reflection. And I was impressed myself by this seriousness with which the representatives of agency departments worked on this issue in a sense of serious common pursuit. At the request of the Secretary General last year, I led the work to design a plan to carry out the panel's recommendations. The result is the Rights Up Front action plan, the Rights Up Front. The Secretary General and I have informed member states about this effort in different contexts, different occasions, and we have been encouraged by their positive reception of the plan. Now we are translating it into action. In essence, the Rights Up Front action plan seeks to strengthen the UN's ability to prevent large-scale violations of human rights. The plan is framed by several guiding concepts. One, the UN must respond early to the risk of mass atrocities so as to prevent their occurrence. We already have grave violations of human rights in Central African Republic, South Sudan. We must stop them from turning into mass atrocities. Secondly, prevention is a common responsibility of the entire UN system. Thirdly, we can best meet this responsibility when we in the United Nations system realize the potential of our combined mandates and roles, and when we operate as one. Fourthly and lastly, sharing information with member states and national actors about human rights violations and civilians in need of protection is a crucial means to gather political momentum for prevention. There has to be a credible cooperation with places, with the countries, with the governments where these events occur. We have, during the last few weeks, activated some of these new mechanisms in response to the crisis in the Central African Republic and South Sudan, and other aspects of Rights Up Front approach will unfold in the months ahead. I just remember that one of the horrible aspects of the Rwanda massacres was the role played by the radio station Milcolin. We need the absolute contrast to the Milcolin, and the Secretary General has sent radio messages in Central African Republic, and we are doing similarly through the other special representative in South Sudan right now. If we are to prevent future tragedies, progress requires leadership and courage to speak out at every level. The kind of leadership and the kind of courage that Romeo Dallaire showed 20 years ago. It requires action by governments to uphold their fundamental responsibilities and by the international community when that does not happen. As never before, the people of the world are measuring the performance of the United Nations by our efforts to protect human rights and civilian populations. You all hear the voices around the world about Syria, Central African Republic, and South Sudan today. Rights Up Front initiative should, in the spirit of the Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and everything we believe in, become a defining part of the culture of the United Nations. It should serve as a reminder of that we the peoples, in the names and the words of the Charter, and our faith in fundamental human rights are at the heart of this organization. So I thank all those involved in organizing this event in sad memory of the huge tragedy in Rwanda 20 years ago. The United Nations will continue to work hand in hand with the people of Rwanda and with the peoples of the world towards lasting peace, development and human rights, towards a life of dignity for all. I thank you.